Hi there, my name is Jared Bishop, and welcome to Design Thinking for SnapEd Part 3, Testing Prototypes. Now that you've had time to think through some of the underlying key assumptions about why you think your intervention will work for your design challenge, we'll move into discussing in more detail how to create a prototype. As a reminder, a prototype is a fast, flexible model of a key element of your solution or rough draft. They can take many different forms from pieces of paper to mock materials. Testing, or prototyping, is a process of quickly trying something out, learning from it, and then trying something different until you have a great solution for your primary audience that is also feasible for your organization and implementation partners. Prototyping requires different methods and ways of thinking than we may be used to in SnapEd. For one, we are interested in testing pieces or components of a larger intervention. The goal is not to build out a complete model of your full intervention idea, like you would do for a pilot test, but rather to focus on the key aspects of your intervention design that align with your key assumptions and are critical to the overall success of your idea. Second, prototyping should be quick. This helps us fail fast or quickly learn to make improvements over a short amount of time. Third, prototyping should be cheap. The goal is to give folks something to respond to. It doesn't have to be perfect or even very polished. Ideally, this is a prototype that costs you less than $100 to pull together, or hopefully it was even free. Think about materials and avenues for testing you have on hand. As you'll see in a minute, our initial prototyping round was done very simply with a piece of paper and markers. And lastly, when prototyping, we are interested in establishing questions to inform our data collection so that we can improve the next prototype. We aren't looking to gather data about effectiveness or impact at this point. Overall, testing the key elements of your idea for shorter periods of time allows you to quickly pivot or adapt elements of your intervention if initial feedback from your target audience indicates that your idea is not meeting your goals like you had hoped. The testing template we've developed helps guide you through this process. You can access the testing template alongside these training videos on the SnapEd Toolkit in the training session. During this video, we'll be walking you through the first 5 steps in the testing template using a case study from our work with design thinking for SnapEd in the food retail sector. We're sticking with elements of our case study from video number 2 and offering some hypothetical cases to take you through the entire prototyping process. We'll then pick up the remaining steps in the testing template in video number 4 when we talk about data collection and analysis. By offering up case studies from our own work, we hope you can see how these methods and tools can be applicable to the SnapEd environment and work you may be doing for PSE changes in direct education activities. So during our co-creation sessions with stakeholders, we asked them to sketch initial prototypes of each intervention idea. This prototype shows one option for the mailbox intervention. The mailbox contains indirect education components like a recipe card and policy, systems, and environmental changes like modifying a store environment to highlight healthy food choices on end caps. Complex interventions that require multiple stakeholders and types of changes are particularly important to prototype. As you can see, this prototype gives us a lot of information about potential components and helps us identify assumptions about how this would work in real-life conditions, like where these items would be located, how many meals would be in a box, and how a store can scan it at checkout. This prototype was fast and cheap to make. In fact, it cost us nothing. But it helped us think through some of the very important questions and challenges around what would be included in our mailbox intervention. On the right, this stakeholder drew a tip card with a recipe customers can make from the items displayed together on the shelf. The tip card also includes ideas for how to modify the recipe and what to do with leftovers. As a group, we generated 2 assumptions we may want to test in the prototyping phase. The first assumption we're making with this prototype is that customers will understand the recipe steps. And the second assumption is that customers will have the basic cooking knowledge to know how to make the recipe. So how might we test these assumptions under real-world context? Start to identify the key component of your intervention you want to test out first. This should be an assumption or core component driving the intervention. In our example, we are prioritizing 2 assumptions to test. 1, the customers will understand the recipe steps, and 2, the customers will have basic cooking knowledge to make the recipe. In step 1, we define the prototype we want to test to challenge, or learn about these assumptions. We're going to start with a very simple recipe that only needs a few non-perishable items, and we're going to display it in a paper bag. We also identified who we need to test this prototype, who the intended audience is, and what we know about them from our inspiration session, what we are trying to learn, and what resources we need for this prototype. Now it's your turn. Here's an opportunity for reflection and action. Think through how you'll answer each of these questions as they relate to your intervention idea. Grab a colleague to brainstorm if you're feeling stuck. Jot down your answers and take them back to your team for reflection and feedback. We encourage you to pause the video and take 5 minutes to answer questions 1 through 5 from the testing template on the earlier slide. So welcome back. We hope this activity went well and that you or your team had some thoughtful discussion. So thank you again for joining us. The last video will walk you through developing a plan for collecting and analyzing data from your first round of prototyping to inform future iterations. If you have questions, email us at designforsnaped@unc.edu, and thank you again.